You're listening to a podcast from Faith Baptist Church of Winter Haven, Florida. Our purpose is to worship God and equip believers to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. If you'd like more information, please visit faithbaptistwh.org.
All right, I'm going to ask if most of you will find Psalm 142 in your copies of Scripture, but I am going to ask if there are two volunteers willing to read other passages to help us get ready. Is it working, Juan? We'll see. Okay, I'm going to trust that this thing works tonight. So I'm going to ask if someone is willing to read 1 Samuel chapter 21, verse 10, down to the first verse of 1 Samuel 22. Okay, so hopefully you can see that up on the screen. I'm asking for one volunteer to take 1 Samuel 21, 10 to 22, 1, and then someone who's willing to read Psalm 57. And the reason that I'm wanting to do these two is because the 1 Samuel passage is actually the background story behind what David writes in Psalm 142, and then both Psalm 57 and 142 are both songs, poems, prayers, if you will, that David wrote from this same situation. Okay, so we're going to get to hear two different reflections that he had about this particular moment in life. Okay, so is someone willing? You've got 1 Samuel. Okay, and thank you, Don. Is someone else willing to read Psalm 57 for us? And I just want us to listen and hear what he says in Psalm 57 before we read Psalm 142. Someone got Psalm 57? Susan? Okay, I'll bring the mic over to you in just a moment then. Okay, so Don, so let's just listen to Don as he reads 1 Samuel 21. This is kind of the backstory of what's happening.
Then David arose and fled that day from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, "Is this not David, the king of the land?" Make sure I'm reading the right one. "Did they not sing of this one as they danced, saying, Saul has struck his thousands, and David his tens thousands? And David took these words to heart and greatly feared Achish, king of Gath. So he disguised his sanity in their sight and acted insanely in their hands, and scribbled on the doors of the gate and let his saliva run down into his beard. Then Achish said to his servants, Behold, you see the man behaving as a madman. Why do you bring him to me? Do I lack madmen, that you have brought this one to act as a madman before me? Shall this one come into my house?" So David departed from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam, and his brothers and his father's household heard of it and went down there to him.
Okay, thank you. So we have this scene, if you remember that, where David's actually acting crazy. He's letting himself drool. He's scratching the gate, the doorposts, so that they think he's insane because he's trying to hide from Saul. And the king of Gath was not impressed, and so then David ended up running away from him. And I don't know what that says. You've probably heard me say this before, but what does that say about his kingdom? He's like, don't we have enough crazy people here? You're going to let another one in here? So David flees, and he hides in a cave, the cave of Adullam. Okay, so here's Psalm 57. Psalm 57.
Psalm 57, to the choir master according to Do Not Destroy, a miktam of David when he fled from Saul in the cave. Be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me, for in you my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings I will take refuge till the storms of destruction pass by. I cry out to God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose for me. He will send from heaven and save me. He will put to shame him who tramples on me. God will send out his steadfast love and his faithfulness. My soul is in the midst of lions. I lie down amid fiery beasts, the children of man whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. They set a net for my steps. My soul was bowed down. They dug a pit in my way, but they have fallen into it themselves. My heart is steadfast, O God. My heart is steadfast. I will sing and make melody. Awake, my glory, awake, O harp and lyre, I will awake the dawn. I will give thanks to you, O Lord, among the peoples. I will sing praises to you among the nations. For your steadfast love is great to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth.
So, just in that initial hearing of Psalm 57, thank you, Susan, what were some of the emotions that you heard from David in Psalm 57? Any emotions stand out to you? Some of the feelings that he expressed? Fear. Okay. What else? Yeah. Betrayal. Okay. Anything else? And there's... Yeah, he ends up with joy at the end. Okay, so even in a little psalm of 11 verses, there's already a progression of emotions. Okay, so now, if you're following along with the Bible study handout, the last sheet of your prayer guide, I'm going to go ahead and read Psalm 142 in the New King James. The Bible study, I chose to put both the New King James and the New Living next to each other, so you can see how two different versions express the same wording, if you want to have a parallel, a Bible, if you will. But I'm going to read from the New King James, and then I'd like to take time to move through the observation questions and process it together. So let's listen, follow along, Psalm 142. A contemplation or maskil of David, a prayer when he was in the cave. Verse 1, I cry out to the Lord with my voice to the Lord, I make my supplication. I pour out my complaint before him. I declare before him my trouble. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then you knew my path. In the way in which I walk, they have secretly set a snare for me. Look on my right hand and see, for there is no one who acknowledges me. Refuge has failed me. No one cares for my soul. I cried out to you, O Lord. I said, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. Attend to my cry, for I am brought very low. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I. Bring my soul out of prison, that I may praise your name. The righteous shall surround me, for you shall deal bountifully with me. So, first of all, the first observation question, and I've already answered a lot of it by our pre-reading to help us get started, but what are the indications of the context, the setting, or the purpose of the psalm? That's our first question, but what clues do we have as to where this was set? Okay, he's in a cave. It says it in the title, and so I don't want us to miss this. And in some languages, I don't know if, obviously there's lots of languages I don't know, but at least in French, these titles that we have, that's actually verse 1. So if you read a French Bible, it would have a number 1, and then a contemplation of David, a prayer. And then verse 2 would start off, I cry out to the Lord with my voice. Okay, so they actually just consider them part of the psalm. So yes, he's in a cave. There are two different occasions when he's in caves. One is the cave of Adullam, which I asked Don to read, and then a little bit later on, he also hides again in a cave. That's where we have the cave En-Gedi. Pastor Austin on Sunday night showed us a picture of a wadi. That was En-Gedi. Okay, so similar region of Israel, but there's two different times that David was in a cave. We believe this is the first time, especially because he says, there's no one with me. So even if you look at 1 Samuel 22, verse 1, he starts off, he hides in the cave, and then people join him. And it seems like the setting here is before anyone gets there. Okay, his wife joins him, Abigail joins him there, and then also, if you keep reading in chapter 22 of 1 Samuel, 400 men join him. He begins to build an army. Okay, but this moment is before any of them have come. He's by himself, all right? A contemplation of David or a maskil of David. Anyone have a different word for contemplation or maskil in the title? Those are the two that we have? Okay. So one of the dictionaries that I looked at, I was like, so what is that? What's a maskil? It's an artistically molded song that exhibits the characteristics of a wisdom poem. Okay, is what that means. So that's fascinating to me. Okay, so letter B. What images or word pictures are used? So let's help each other out here. What images or word pictures do you see? What do you notice? I'll make a list here. Go ahead. Okay, so we have, he pours out his complaint. Okay? Just feels like a pitcher just dumping it all over, right? It's just gushing out, okay? What else? Keith. Okay, so how does he's in the dark and he's alone. What are some of the words that he uses to describe that? He uses the word prison, yep. They have snares set out for him, good. He says he's brought very low. If you've been to Israel, he actually probably isn't super low. He's probably actually in a cave that's up on a cliff, into a hillside, right? And so, but he has that picture of when he says, I'm brought very low, he may be laying on the floor of the cave, but we understand what he's saying. He's saying, I'm at the bottom here. I'm alone. I'm in the dark. And he probably is in the dark. He's in a cave. Okay, good. What other word pictures do we see? Yeah, so we've got, there's a trap. It's possible they had literally drawn a rope between two trees to try to trip him. I think that's just stuff from the movies. I don't think they literally had dug traps for him. Okay, but Saul was absolutely chasing him, right? And they were hunting him like you would hunt a bird or hunt a deer. Okay, they were literally hunting him. That's very real. Right, and he talks about being on a path. No, he's not. He's in a cave. But we know what he's saying. He's saying the way that I was going, my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then you knew my path. He's saying, you know what's going on in my life. You know where I am. Okay? Yes. Good. Yep. He's describing abandonment. There's no one who acknowledges me. Okay? Yes. Thank you, Mona. He is desperate, and he is crying out. He is crying out. And it makes me wonder, I don't know when he wrote this. Okay, it's in my mind, he's still in the cave, and he's got a piece of parchment. It's possible that he wrote this a week or two later. I don't know when God inspired him to actually write this down on paper. I don't know that piece of it, okay? But it did make me wonder, and it made me want to even ask this question. Are there specific times of prayer in your own life? And don't answer this out loud, but are there specific times that you can remember a specific prayer when you would say, I cried out? There are some in mine. I know exactly where I was. I know exactly what the need was, and I was desperate. I am crying out to God with everything in me. God, please do this, or please don't do this. Please help. Okay? And so this seems like this is one of those moments for David. He's like, I am crying out to the Lord. And not only that, but we'll go a little farther, Susan. He says, come on, with my voice. And then he says it twice. I think this is allowed. And I think we talked about this last week, or maybe it was on a Sunday morning. But the question is, when was the last time you cried out aloud? Or even, where do you do that? Is there a place that you can go to where you can speak out loud to God? It's just interesting. He's very, very strong here. Yep. And then there's one more. It's the I declare. Oh, I saw another. Tom. It's very, very well said, Tom. And you're right. This is what is called an individual lament. And depending on the kind of, we said last week, there are some different kinds of psalms. There's royal psalms or messianic psalms. There's psalms that are called the psalms of ascent. Those are that was last week with 131. As Israelites were progressing they were preparing to go up the mountain to Jerusalem to worship, they would be singing these songs. And these different kinds of psalms that they are, each of them actually have some structure within them. And you can say, here's usually what the initial part. It's just like if you're going to write a formal letter, you put the address at the top, and then there's a date, and then you say, dear so-and-so, and then you introduce it, and then you make your petition or whatever, and then you put your salutations, right, and your signature. Like, we have a form. We're taught it in grade school. Well, it's actually the same thing with laments. There's actually a structure of 6 or 7 different pieces, and Some of them follow all 7. Some of them move some stuff around. There's lots of flexibility because David's a master poet, but there is some structure to it. And so, Tom, I love that you noticed that yeah, he starts off with this really strong plea, and we're jumping down to any structural elements, letter D there. He starts off with this really strong plea, doesn't he, up here? And then you have this center section of just, I'm in trouble. Let me move this up just a little bit. From 3 down. I'm in trouble. I'm hurting. Help me. And then we get to this very end, and we see hope down here, don't we? The righteous shall surround me. How many are in the cave with him? Nobody. God is in the cave with him. But David, by the end of the psalm, can already say, the righteous shall surround me, for you shall deal bountifully with me. Now, let me ask another question. We'll check our history a little bit here. Has David already been anointed king? David was anointed king in 1 Samuel 16. 1 Samuel 17 is the sling, big guy, Goliath, right? So David's first act after being anointed, Saul doesn't even know he's anointed as king yet. David does. But now, Saul's actually chasing him. So that piece for me also helps with the context of David knows he's been anointed king. But he's running for his life. And he's alone. And I don't know, but it would seem to me he would be asking, God, you're the one that chose me. Samuel dumped the oil on my head. People saw it. Like, what is going on, right? And so he's struggling, but he gets to the end and says, bring my soul out of prison, get me out of this cave, because I want to praise you, and there will come a day when the godly, the righteous, those who love God and are wanting to follow him and obey him, they are going to surround me, and you're going to deal generously with me. He starts to have hope at the end, which is amazing. So, all right, we've talked about the emotions that are expressed in the images. Well, let's do a little bit more. The emotions from we did for Psalm 57. Are there other emotions that you'd like to highlight from this psalm? What emotions do you see? We got into it a little bit. He's desperate. What else do you see? Yes, Brady. Okay, there is some confusion. Good. What else? There is hope. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, there's a dependence. Can I put it that way? That's good. Yeah, he expresses trust. He really does. Yeah, yep. Yep. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then you knew my path, right? There's trust here. That's the. And he's still overwhelmed. Yep. So one of the people that I looked at as I was trying to understand, I need help with poetry. I said that last week. What one of the commentators said is there's 3 little kind of mountain peaks as you go through this psalm, and this is the first mountain peak right here, where you see the first. He gets up on this summit of there is hope here. He's still struggling because you get right back into there's a snare here and no one acknowledges me. This refuge has failed me that means there's no escape. Right? I don't have any protection. I'm in trouble here. I'm in a cave. If Saul walks into the front of this cave, I'm done. He's trying to kill him. There's no escape for me. Right? So he's still struggling, but then you've got a little mountain peak here. But I cry out to you, Lord. You are my refuge, and then you get to the highest peak down here at the bottom, right? And so you can kind of see it as he's going through. There is this cycle of emotions, isn't it? And I love that because that's who we are, right? How many times do we build up our courage? Okay, God, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to the mechanic. I'm going to trust you. And then the mechanic's like, I'm happy to help you. This will be $4,000 for your blinker fluid. And you're like, man. I didn't think I needed blinker fluid, right? And so you have these emotions, right? That's the world that we live in. Don't ever pay for blinker fluid, okay? All right, so any initial Well, okay, let me not skip D. Any other structural elements that you know? There's one thing that I found really fascinating, but I'm going to ask you, anything in the structure that you notice here of the Psalm 142? Keith. Yeah. There's no, Keith, you said that so well, and there's sometimes, and I don't know if you've ever seen this if you've had a little boy. I was the little boy, where mom and dad just say, yeah, just go run. Just run it all out. And when you're completely exhausted yourself, come on back, and then you'll be willing to listen to some instruction. And it's the picture of the little kid that wants to hit you, right? And so you just have your hand on their forehead, and they're swinging for all they're worth. And you're like, just keep swinging. Eventually you're going to wear out, and then I'll hug you, and we're going to be okay. You know what I'm saying? That's me, and that's God saying, all right, come to, I'm ready for you when you're ready to realize that you need me, and you exhaust yourself. Yeah. Okay. I love this. I'm going to erase the with my voice. Yeah, Ed, you got it right, because in the first verse, now all of this I love. You can see it even in our English translations. We can see the parallelism, right? Every verse, I cried out to the Lord with my voice to the Lord I make my supplications. These are parallel lines. He's reinforcing what he says. We can see it, and it's A B A B A B all the way through, except for verse 5. Verse 5 has an extra line in it, so we're going to get there in a minute. But Ed's exactly right. In verse 1, he's saying, I cried to whom? To the Lord. So this is third person, right? Because look, he says to the Lord again, and then he says before him. That's all third person. Now, all of a sudden, when we get to verse 3, when my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then now he's talking directly to God. The perspective has changed a little bit. Isn't that amazing? But then also, so Ed, I think you're right. He gets to verse 3. He's like, you knew my path in the way in which I walk. And so he's saying, look at my right hand and see. And so now he's really crying out to him. Look, there's no one at my right hand. Right hand is where your help would be, right? That's your sword arm. And so that's where you need the shield bearer to protect you. Because if you're fighting, then you're vulnerable here. So because you can hold your own shield on your left hand. So someone on your right hand is your protector, your helper. And he's like, I've got no helper. I've got no protector. I've got no defense here. No advocate, right? But we get down to verse 5. I cried out to you, O Lord. I said, you are my refuge. And then we get to my portion in the land of the living. And so that's a unique line in the whole psalm by my interpretation, because it's the only verse in the psalm that has a third. It's a triplet instead of a couplet. All right? So any initial questions or insights so far? That was great, Ed. Any other initial insights or questions? Michelle. I love it. You're 100% right. And just laying it out that way, we can see the pattern of the emotions and even his thoughts as he's wrestling with his thoughts. Isn't that something? Very good. Yep. Brady first. Yep. Yeah. That's awesome. Yep. Elijah is it is great when we can start tying this to other people. Did I hear another name? Right, Elijah was also in a cave. Yeah. The verse here, there's no one who acknowledges me. The reference that I think probably comes to all of our minds is Jesus on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Because in every other case, Elijah, Daniel, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Joseph thrown in prison, any of us that say, there's no one. The truth is, there's always at least one. Always. And in Elijah's case, which is a great example, God had well over 100, I don't remember the number, but I know there was the multiple prophets that were hidden in 50s, but God had the remnant. He had hundreds. But Jesus, that was true. Jesus hung alone on that cross. And so, when the author of Hebrews later on says, we have a high priest that can understand, he's telling the truth. Because the most alone that we will ever feel, Jesus actually understands what that means. He truly experienced solitude in a way that actually none of us have yet, even though at times our feeling of loneliness is very real. I'm not minimizing that in any way. Does that make sense? Okay. So all right. So let's. Is there anyone who'd like to try to say a main point, summarize the Solomon in a phrase? Susan, go for it. Right. Yeah. No, that's true, and I would definitely say for the 6 verses of it. It is. There's a lot of self-pity in there. That's good. That's good. Yep. Yes. Joyce. Yeah. 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 Seeking deliverance. Good. Good. Yep, it is. It's a short prayer on seeking deliverance. Yeah. Please help. Susan. Yeah. Okay. Complain, but God. All right. That's good. I love it. I love it. He does, and I want to talk about that in a minute because that bothered me. So that for your initial questions, letter E, I wrote down, how is it okay that he complains? Complaining is a sin. Okay? And so I looked up, I found at least 3 different Hebrew words for complain, and that helped me because this specific word for complain is not the word that's used in Numbers when Israel's grumbling and whining. Okay, so that was part of this word for complain. It's translated in Psalm. I wrote down the reference it's in Psalm 104 verse 34, and it's translated there meditation. The word complain it's expressing troubled thoughts, whereas the Hebrew word for grumbling or whining, that word carries the idea of blaming God, of assigning malice to God or assigning indifference to God. Okay, so when we grumble, we've crossed a line of saying, well, I don't think that you're good, God, or I think that you are doing wrong in this. That's different than expressing troubled thoughts. God, I'm hurting. I'm struggling here. In English, it's translated complain in both cases at times, but there are actually 2 different ideas behind them, and that helped me a lot. Because I do believe that murmuring and complaining and whining and grumbling are sin. I absolutely, and I have to confess it. I have to catch myself on it. And so that was a part I went, wait a minute, why is this okay? I pour out my complaint before you. And obviously David sinned, but at different times. But so let me ask this. So I just answered letter B. Let's ask letter A. If God knows our prayers in interpretation, why should we cry out? Okay, we should cry out because it shows faith. Okay, good. Why else? Because that it's obedience, because God tells us to. Good. Why else? Because he's our Father, and we're supposed to talk to our fathers. Yep, good. Wow, Keith, that is really insightful. It's really helpful. So what Keith just said, if you didn't hear him, was typically our initial human response is one of defensiveness or justification or blame. We will typically say, no, it's not my fault, and we start pointing the finger elsewhere. But it's when we recognize, oh, wait a minute, it is me, and that leads to tears, that leads to crying. That's when we're ready to accept help from God and turn our heart to God. Yeah, that's really well said. Yeah. When we speak our situation out loud to God, what happens? He hears us, and we hear ourselves. And I think that's huge. God already knows the situation. There's never been a time that we've cried something out loud to God, and God has gone, oh, I didn't realize. Thank you. Right? No, it's never happened. Now, it happens to us. It happens to me all the time. I say it out loud and I go, oh, that sounded very different in my ears than in my mind. And I think that's one of the reasons that we need to pray out loud, is because we hear our voice, we hear the emotion, and we realize, oh, this is a much bigger deal to me than I thought it was. The language that I'm using is much stronger than I even thought it was in my mind. And I think that's helpful for us to realize, okay, this is actually, someone stepped on a nerve, or I stepped on a nerve or something. This is real. Right? I'm raising my voice to God in this. And so I think that, so what ends up happening when we speak it out loud, all of those things that were mentioned, I think are true. Now, does God respond to prayer? Yes. God responds to our prayers. But I do think that a lot of the benefit of crying out to God, it's ourselves. It's our minds, God using that to shape our minds and to shape our hearts, okay? All right, then let's get to letter C. What did David mean by my portion in the land of the living? This section right down here, what does that mean, my portion in the land of the living? Michelle, can you read the New Living Translation again, if you don't mind? You said it a moment ago. We might agree with the translation, but it's hard, isn't it? When he says the word portion means allotment. So he's saying, you are my portion, you're my allotment. What he's saying is, you're all I have, and you're all I need. You're it. Now, yes, Pastor Austin just preached it. Psalm 23, verse 1, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not, or I have all that I need. Now, David's in the cave. His wife's not there. His friends aren't there. His mom and dad aren't there. Right? That's all he has. But it made me, when I wrestled with that, can I actually say that? God, you are all, I can say you're all that I need intellectually. But I really feel like I need Honey Nut Cheerios. Right? I know I'm being silly. But we add a lot of stuff to that need list. I'm not even getting to that you're all that I want. We need air conditioning. Oh, buddy. Yeah, I get it. It's really funny that 50 years ago people lived in Florida and we didn't have much air conditioning. Yeah, some of you are like, yeah, I was here. But no. So do you see what I'm saying? This is one of the application questions for me, where David gets to the place where he says, my portion, and then we've got in the land of the living, which is one of my favorite phrases in the Psalms. Psalm 27 is one of my favorite Psalms. Psalm 27 verse 13 is, I knew I would have lost hope unless I knew I would see you in the land of the living, see your goodness in the land of the living, which means David says, I know I will still see your goodness in my life, in this life. We know we're going to see his goodness in heaven. We know that. But David's absolutely convinced God will show me his goodness in this life, in the land of the living. So he's saying, in this life, you're all that I need. I've been anointed king. I'm by myself in a cave. I have no idea what's coming next. But I want you. And I'll be satisfied with you. That's a powerful statement, isn't it? It's a powerful statement. So let me just ask, there's three different application questions at the end. Let me just ask us to consider this second one. How does this prayer by David compare to my prayers? Is anyone willing to share, just very, very briefly, is there a place that you pray out loud and you get away with it? Like you don't scare your neighbors or your family? Because Charles Spurgeon said, a cave is a great prayer closet. And I was like, you know what, that's true. There was no one else there. He could talk as loudly as he wanted to, and he could probably hear his voice echoing in the cave. You know, if you put yourself in that setting, I was like, man, where's the nearest cave? Anyway, so where do you pray out loud and you can get away with it? And any suggestions? Yes. At church. Okay. Good. That's true. We've been praying out loud here. Yep. Danielle. In the shower. Okay. Yep. That makes sense. I hadn't thought of that one. In your car. That's my favorite right now. I've stopped using the radio, and I'm just praying out loud in the car. And I don't care if people think I'm crazy, because I kind of am. So they're just seeing me for who I really am. Good. Other suggestions? These are great. Yes. In your closet. Okay. All right. Jim's going to get a bunch of orders for soundproofing closets, soundproof doors, noise-canceling baffles in our rooms. I need a cone of silence, installed in my closet. Some of you are old enough to, what's that guy's name? Is it Get Smart? Is that what it was back in the 50s or something? I love that guy. That's one of my dad's favorite shows. I do think it's real, and I know you've heard me tell the story. I'm trying to learn Hungarian, and I was practicing my Hungarian stuff out loud while I was running. and I ran by a school and by this hedge, and there was 2 teachers doing a smoke break, and I'm speaking Hungarian, and they looked at me, and the Hungarian phrase I was learning, it was a business, and it was teaching people how to speak business phrases. So I'm just trying to learn Hungarian, and it was something like asking someone if they wanted to go out after work. So I say this phrase, would you like to go out for a meal after work? As I'm running by these 2 ladies, they're like, what? I'm like, sorry, shouldn't be speaking out loud. But I think if we pray out loud, it's really okay, right? Especially if you pray in Hungarian, because no one will know what you're saying. So I do want to ask you to consider, are there times when you can remember specific prayers, and why? What was significant about that moment in time in your praying? And the follow-up question then for us is, if we aren't being fervent in our prayers, if we're not being earnest in our prayers right now, why not? Is it because we don't trust that God's going to answer? And can we be honest with God with that? And say, God, I've lost some hope. Or God, I've lost that. Like, David's being honest here. And I love that about him. And that honesty leads him to the truth. God is going to have righteous people surround him, and he is going to deal bountifully with him. That is in David's future. So God leads him to the truth. And so my question is, can David's prayer help us shape our prayers? I think it can. Yeah. So let me pray for us right now briefly, and then I think Ron Forsberg, there's been times when he has led us, and when he closes us with a song, and so I'm going to invite us to close with a song here, okay? Tom.
So I can glorify you. You're absolutely right. Thank you. And you're 100% right. That's where it leads us, is it goes from the self-pity that either Marianne or Susan was talking about to, no, it's not about me, it's about him. Yeah. 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 It's sweet, isn't it? It's sweet. Let me pray for us. Father, I need you. We need you. Like David, would you lead us to hope? Would you lead us to trust? Father, would you help me? Would you help each of us to consider our prayer lives? And Father, I'm also asking that you help me and help each of us consider, are you indeed our portion? Are we looking for fulfillment and satisfaction in things or people other than you? And have we been deceived? Have we deceived ourselves that other things can meet our needs outside of you? Oh, Father, would you draw us to you and help us to see our desperate need for you and for you alone? And it's in your precious Son's name we come to you. Amen.